Hey y'all, so I just made a video and I will bet 99% of parents out there are sure that they're in tuned enough to their children, doing the right thing by their children, probably read hundreds of books on how to raise children. And I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job, but this episode, I think really, does a deep dive on how things at the surface that you might be doing that you think are absolutely the right thing for your child, they're just not enough. So that's why I really wanted to spread the word on this episode. But again, I don't even have children, so I just have Bella. But she's doing pretty good, and seriously, I really just would love to see this episode get in front of more people because I think it is so important, some of the things he says. And I, who am always thinking, I was like, yeah, I never thought of that. I never realized that that's more important than that, or that will have long-lasting effects while the other thing will wear off. And those are the kind of things that I think a parent really has to ponder to really determine, because a parent only has so much amount of time, right? So they can't, because Joe Biden's dad said it best. He said, if you care about everything, your actions are going to be about nothing. And I think that's true. You can only do so much. So while you're doing something, shouldn't the things that you're doing have the most effect, or you're making the best use of the attention that you're giving to your children? So I just thought that this episode really could be something that a parent thinks about before handing that cell phone to that child for the very first time. That's all. Thanks, y'all. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, you're gonna hear some weird motorized sound in the background. That's Bella. She's making biscuits. But anyway, I watched this Megyn Kelly episode yesterday, and it was so good. I mean, I really like her, and I know some don't, but she had a really good guest on. His name was Dr. Sachs. And, it's so funny because, it feels like the world is so out of control, and nothing makes sense anymore, and when you know that so many people have mental illness and so many people are freaking out and doing such horrible things, and and the kids of today, they're just so horrible. And not all kids are horrible, but even the best kids, they're in such danger of becoming the worst kids, because you have kids that don't show any signs of being dangerous, and they just snap, and they have really good upbringings. I'm not talking about kids that it's completely understandable that they're going to go off when they get a little older, stronger, and more independent with no supervision. But it's just so crazy. And so I was watching this show, and this doctor, he made this book called The Collapse of Parenting. I think it's called that. I don't even remember now. And I watched it 3 times because I watched it myself and I watched it with my husband, and then I just watched it again. And it's just so soothing to me because it just, at least, even if it's so going to be so hard to fix and correct and get back on course, it at least really outlines how it all goes so wrong, And in his estimation, and you gotta agree with so much of what he says, a lot of it is due to something called gentle parenting, where you don't discipline your kid. You hardly ever say no. You don't limit their internet access enough. You give them way too much privacy, and you're constantly running them to play dates and things to try to keep them popular. And he just, in his view, it is the worst things you can do, because what children really need today, especially with the internet, better known as, throughout this video, I'll probably refer to it as the devil. It's just waiting to just snap them up, and he was saying that privacy is the absolute worst thing you can give your child, which I've always agreed. I think the second you give your kid a cell phone, that is the time. That is the only time that you have any kind of bargaining power, because when they want one, you have to give it to them with the rules that they can only use it in public, in the living room, where at any given time you can say, let me see what you're doing. Or you put parental controls on and you let them know that every single thing they do is going to come on your phone too. And you let them know so many things that they would normally never agree to. But they want a phone so bad that you make all these rules and then, you give them one. But it has to be at the start of giving them that phone. Because the second you give them that phone, and then they start to do questionable things or things that you're like, oh, this is not good, this bad, it's too late. You cannot then rescind some of their privileges with that phone, because all you'll wind up doing is making them hate your guts, act out, resent you, become really, really angry. And so if you do it at the time that you give this to your child, they just understand. I mean, it's like any other kind of agreement that we enter into. If we know up front, Bella, her tail is swishing, my glasses about to knock them on the floor. If you enter an agreement with someone and right at the start you say, okay, this is how it's going to be. It's got to be like this, and that. Then people are like, okay. And then they decide if they want to embark on such an arrangement. And they usually, they'll respect the parameters because that's what they knew up front going in. But if you were to, I don't know, whenever you've purchased something or whatever and you didn't read the fine print, or they spring on some certain aspects of the sale after the fact, and then you feel like, that's not what we agreed to, of course you're going to get angry and resentful and mad and goodness knows what else. So the time to do it is the second before they get that phone in their hand, because they will be using it within the parameters of what is safe for them. And also you have to limit how much they do it. But even then, according to this doctor, that phone is, I mean, at this point, really, in society, you don't want your child to feel like, well, everybody has a phone and I don't. That's got a downside too. So you really have to strike that balance of, okay, I'll give you a phone, but you cannot use the excuse, well, all my friends can do this and that and I can't. Because if that's what you're going to say to me every minute, then I'm not even going to give you the phone. Because if I have to hear that anyway, why should I even bother taking the risk of giving you a phone if you're still going to be so dissatisfied and feel like everything is not fair? So that's kind of the way you got to do it. And you got to do it up front before you do anything else. And then and that is crucial. There is no two ways around it. And you have to, you have to stand your ground, because kids, man, like we go off to work and we're busy and we have things on our mind, but children and preteens and even teenagers, they're like little prison inmates. They have nothing to do all day but plot and plan and come up with ways to try to get out of what they consider a prison, for those parents that are really trying to keep, a good eye on their children. So I think you really have to, what he says, and I agree, you really have to stand firm, because the worst kind of parenting, believe it or not, like you have like three kinds. Let's say the parents who don't care, the parents who sometimes care and sometimes don't, and then the parent that cares every minute. And you would think the worst kind of parent is the one that never cares. But really, the worst type of parent is the parent that sometimes cares and sometimes doesn't. Because a parent like that, a child will never learn that there's a boundary, and that if they bother you enough and they hound you enough, you'll give in. And so you never want to be that kind of parent. And you certainly don't want to be the kind of parent that never cares. So the only kind of parent that really is left to be is the one that always cares. And it's hard. And I know that so many people that signed on to be parents, just like people that that, and I'm not comparing children to dogs, but people that take on the responsibility of a pet, they think, oh, it'll be cool, he's so cute and everything. And then you have all that responsibility of walking the dog and bringing the dog to the vet and caring for the dog and making sure that dog is really well cared for, even though it seems easy, but it isn't. And a child, 100,000 times harder. And that's why so many parents that just are like, oh, we're going to have a baby, and they romanticize what having a baby really means, but it's really, really, really hard. It's the hardest thing you will ever embark on, ever, ever, ever. I cannot think of anything that requires more of a commitment than having a child. But today, it's just, people just don't devote the kind of attention to children that they need. And, he was saying that, like, when you're so concerned with your child's popularity, that, yeah, they might get their feelings hurt if they're not invited to a certain party because you're not making sure that they're socially as popular as other children. But that will dim and that will go away, and they can get over that and they can be jollied out of it, or you can take their mind off of it. But if a child doesn't have a good home foundation where they know that they're loved and they feel secure, and they don't grow up to say, oh, I got to get a ton of clicks on TikTok or something, and if I don't, my life is over. That is why they are getting so depressed all the time, because so many people are, TikTok and all those internet channels are such a competitive field, and they are judging themselves, and they're measuring their purpose and everything else against other people's, and they're feeling like they're such a loser because this video got 1 million views and they only got 20 or whatever it is. And he was explaining that that's fleeting, and that is not the basis for which they should be putting all their energy into. And it's up to the parent to restrict how often they let themselves be on social media. And there's just no two ways around it. And I am probably one of the only people, because I am talking 20 years ago, me and my husband were walking in the mall, and all of a sudden I saw on the T-Mobile kiosk, family plan for four lines for $100 or whatever it was. And I was like, what? Who has 4 people in their family? That needs phones, because I'm thinking just parents, 2 lines. And then I started to see, they were targeting preschool children, saying, oh, they should have them in their knapsack for emergency and school shootings and all this. And I was like, they don't need a phone for emergency. They just need one of those 911 things that older people have in their house, and you just pay like $10 a month or something. And if you press the button, you can dial emergency. That's all that children need. They don't need... or a flip phone that only texts, something that's made just for children's emergency use case. But a real phone that gets on the internet, and oh my gosh, I remember 20 years ago when it first started, I thought this is going to be the ruination of society. Because the next week next month when we went to the mall, I had started to see all these kids with phones in their hand, and it was very weird because it had never happened before. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was just crazy. And then I remember seeing even this one kid that had like this brand new Samsung or whatever, or the Evo, I think it was. And I remember me wanting the Evo back then, but I couldn't afford it, and here he's like 12 years old or 13 years old flipping the Evo in his back pocket. And I was like, really? That kid's got a better phone than me? Doesn't even appreciate it. And I'm like saving up for months to buy my Evo. And it just blew my mind. And I just started to see that it was going to be really bad. And this was before TikTok, before Twitter. Before all of that. It was, I think, when MySpace was big or something. And I just was, I don't know. I'm not here to say, oh, I'm the original, doom predictor or anything like that. But I just, it was so obvious to see it coming to me. And it did. And in every way, every single headline where we have somebody that does something so heinous, and you never would have expected it of them. And I'm not going to mention anybody current, because I think that person is getting so much publicity. It's blowing my mind that these channel creators are not being responsible and only referring to the CEO shooter as such, or maybe even using his initials. But I listened to one podcast last night, and they must have said LM's full name 100 times, 200 times maybe even. And I was like, are you kidding me? I couldn't even stomach it. I had to exit. And I think I'm going to be exiting most of my channels, because that's all they do is promote this bad behavior. And you're just like, no, I can't. And I don't know. I mean, I've always been a little bit weird in terms of I don't think like everybody else, but my goodness, now with everything that's happening, I think so differently, and I have such a different opinion that I can't even enjoy myself when I'm sitting there and learning about, what's going on. It just makes me crazy. And so, I don't know, gonna have to unplug for a while in that regard. But I did just want to say that if you really wanted, if you know anybody that has young children that are coming of age and they're about to be getting a phone or whatever, I really suggest that you tune them into that episode. It starts, I'm gonna put the episode in my description. It's Megyn Kelly and Dr. Sachs is on, and he is amazing in his point of view. Now, he's a little hard to look at because the angle of his laptop, he just, it looks, I don't know if it's the angle of his laptop, but it's in many different frames. He looked like a madman. And me and my husband were laughing because I was like, he looks so crazy. But he made so much sense that I just had to believe that he just had a bad angle on his camera. But it was a really good show, and it's definitely one that I think you should share with anybody that has young children, because it really, really explains where it all goes wrong. I mean, it touches on the autism spectrum. It touches on the depression, just everything. It was such a good episode. So I'm going to link it in the description. I'm going to link the whole episode, but the part where the doctor is on starts at like 20:25, I want to say, and I think goes the full hour, and it just was so good. So I'd be curious if you do watch it and you enjoy it and you think that it makes as many points as I do, if you leave a comment, because I love reading about, when people find something that is really, helpful to them or someone they know. So yeah. But anyways, that's all I got. I hope you have a great holiday. Don't know how many times I'll be posting because it's just so, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I have nothing really to say because everything is being said ad nauseum. So what the hell, but I did want to share that Megyn Kelly episode because it's really good. So if I don't talk to anybody, have a Merry Christmas, y'all, and a great New Year. Thanks. Bye.